Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm Simon Bestwick.
And I'm Gemma Files, and this is, of course, No
No
Darkness
darkness,
But
but
Ours.
ours.
Welcome to the third and final part of this special edition of No Darkness But Ours, in which we interview Hailey Piper, author of The Worm and His Kings, The Possession of Natalie Glasgow, and No Gods for Drowning, among many other titles about horror, queerness, and her ongoing mission to, in her own words, make horror as gay as fuck.
So, here's a question. We've been talking about fiction a lot, and let's talk about, if you're interested in doing that, about the ways that recent events have maybe begun to make their way into your fiction, because I know that I went through a phase where I was like, I'm not a particularly political person, la la. It's like I don't write political stuff. And then when Roe versus Wade was overturned, I just crapped out this story that was one of the most angry things that I've ever written, and which was a pure power fantasy, a pure negative power fantasy, a pure, put me in, coach. I want to be witch king pope of the world, and just punish. I will be all three furies at once and do this. Yeah. So tell me about that.
What's the question again?
Okay, so the question is, life is getting kind of shitty in terms of being of living in the world, being queer, being out, being being who you are, and do you find yourself reacting to that? I mean, your work was already queer as fuck. Do you find yourself reacting to that at all, or are you just like, I'm just gonna double down, I'm just gonna continue to be who I am?
I mean, I'm not sure what I could be doing. I suppose that's different from what I was already doing as far as that was concerned, because a lot of this stuff, I mean, I don't feel like what's happening this year is really anything new. I think it's just been turned up another notch from the way things have been for years.
Yeah, it's more like the things that people were thinking inside of themselves, they feel empowered to just say outright and act upon in a really overt way.
I guess, and maybe this is just a matter of like, who I see or where I am, but like, I feel like that's just that I've been seeing that for the longest time. It feels like, I don't, when I sit down to write, I'm not really thinking about that stuff. To be honest, but that doesn't mean it isn't bleeding into the work anyway.
Yeah.
It just does it without me kind of being like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. It's like, no, this stuff comes as kind of instinct. Yeah. It's only really after the fact that I can look back and go like, oh, I guess I was having an issue with this.
I guess that's what that was about.
Right. I mean, and that's sometimes a matter of interpretation and such, or like, am I just assuming that, or what? I mean, it's one of those things like Queen of Teeth was one of those situations where I was just wanting to tell an honest story, and I wanted it to feel like me. And I honestly didn't know if it was even going to find a publisher because of how weird it was, let alone, the people who've read it since then. And it definitely was not meant to be prescient or prescient. I'm not sure I pronounced that word. But it was not supposed to be something that was predicting like the level of bodily autonomy issues and authoritarian issues and like different things that have happened since it came out, that is just like, I couldn't have known that some of this was going to happen. But I think that the water has been building to a boil for years. And I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I'm writing with my perspective, and if something's in the air, it's going to come out in the story. It's going to come out in the work. So I wouldn't say that I've written anything to be particularly reactive to anything that's going on, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening anyway. I would have to look at what I definitely think some of the stuff I've done in the past 6 months has been bleaker than usual, but people aren't going to be reading a lot of that until late next year or even the year after. So they're going to be like, wow, I guess Hailey Piper was going through something at this point.
Yeah, and the hope is that one day people will be reading it during better times.
That is my hope. My hope is that they're going to look back and it's like, well, I'm glad things aren't the way that they were when she was writing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the the boiling frog water metaphor is one I think about a lot.
Yeah.
There's a song by Bruce Cockburn called "The Trouble with Normal," and the refrain is, "The trouble with normal is it always gets worse." Like the standard of normal. It's like, no, that's just normal.
I think that's honestly some of what's going on in a nutshell, because there's all these people waiting for, on one side, they're waiting for like the apocalypse or whatever. And the other side is waiting for the revolution. And it's like, that's just, the world isn't going to end and things are just going to get shittier.
So just slowly, the same way that.
Right. Unless you work against it. And that has to be your normal. Your normal has to be fighting against this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even if the only way that you're fighting against it is to live your truth, write your truth, be the person that you are.
Yeah. I mean, everyone who is being honest with themselves and honest in their work and their art and such is doing a little bit. I mean, that's one of those things. There's all this panic about the AI stuff right now. And I do agree that using it the way it's being used against artists right now is wrong. But there's people worried about like, oh, well, what about when AI writing starts being more of a thing? I'm just like, that's why the indulgences we were talking about earlier on are so important, because you're not going to feed stuff into an AI and it's going to come out with something that has like, a monster with 1,000 penises or something.
Yeah, no, you're not going to do that. I mean, this is the thing. I don't think it's so terrible to, you have to be pretty specific about this came out of me feeding stuff into an AI.
Right. At that point, the person feeding it becomes the artist. They're just wanting the AI to do some of the work. But I'm just like, it can only pretend to be human to a certain extent. Whereas we don't have to pretend, we just are.
Yeah, exactly. Hands, the hands are only going to be as fucked up as we make them.
The hands will be, if the hands are fucked up, they will be intentionally fucked
up. That's it.
Right.
Intentionally fucked up.
With going back to Wormwood as Kings for a second, because I mean it's a great standalone piece, but there are going to be 2 sequels forthcoming. Yes. You've got Even the Worm Will Turn, which is that next year? And
that's coming out in 2023, and then the third one, which we're withholding the title for the moment, will be coming out in 2024.
And was that something? I mean, was there always kind of a game plan to kind of for it to be a trilogy, or for the story to carry on past the end point of The Worm and His Kings, or was this just something that occurred during or after the writing of the original novella?
Well, while writing the novella, there was a lot I had to kind of cut out about the lore and such. I couldn't, it was a novella, and it's already kind of like creeping towards the limit of what a novella could be. So it's like, 1, I couldn't include everything, and 2, it wouldn't have made sense to, because Monique just wasn't going to encounter a lot of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was room there was wiggle room to stretch and start to explore other elements of this lore and the ramifications of it. But in writing it, no, I was thinking standalone. That's really my preference, honestly. Like something that I like things to start as a standalone, and then if there's room to grow, or if there's a desire to grow, to move from there. I'm less interested in just starting it off as a series. It's the same with like No Gods for Drowning. I was like, yeah, there's plenty of world to explore, but I wasn't sure while I was writing it if I was going to go back to it. And at this point, like, I know I'm going to go back to it. So
Right.
with The Worm and His Kings, it really was kind of like, well, there's lots of other stuff, but am I going to do anything with it? I don't think so. But people kept talking to me about it, and it seemed like there was interest. So I started working on like, okay, how would I explore that? What directions would I go in? And really, that was almost going to be a short story collection of like possible things, but that wasn't really working out either. And I was like, this is not the most interesting way to touch on these subjects. And so then another book, started to develop, and then I was like, and then I'm going to need this one. So it kind of grew as I kept thinking about the ideas, and now, so now it will be the Worm and His Kings trilogy.
Excellent.
I remember when I was doing the Hexlinger series, originally A Book of Tongues was supposed to be a standalone, and then in every case I would get to about 80,000 words and go, fuck no, it's not going to be done by the time I get to 100,000. It's just not going to be done. I'm not even going to get to the end of my original outline.
Yeah.
It was sort of like every act of the outline, every act of the 3-act outline became a book. And I remember at the time, it was every time I do it, my editor would sort of react as though that too was a type of self-indulgence. To revisit an idea was a type of self-indulgence. To go like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not done yet. There's one more. I need some more. I need some more, man. And
I mean, there's an intrinsic. I feel like there's kind of like we're not completely in control of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of it occurs to us. I like Stephen King's analogy that it's like an archaeologist or a paleontologist. You're unveiling more. You're discovering it. We're not like one of the things with characters, especially. Once they find a life of their own in our heads, I feel like we can make them do things, but it's going to ring false, both to the reader and ourselves. And honestly, I will know that a character is not doing what they would do because I'll write it and then I'll step away, and it will bother me either all day or until I fix it. Essentially, I'll be like, this isn't right. That's not what they would do. That's not who they are. That's not something that would happen. Like, that's ridiculous. Go fix it. So in the same sense, it's like sometimes a story just isn't finished.
I like the archaeological metaphor. You don't stop halfway through excavating, a creature and go like, no, I'm shit, there's too much of this. It's like, oh my God,
skeleton's
another
too
leg?
big, just bury it again.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, more legs? What the heck?
Nobody needs a dinosaur that big.
Yeah.
Well, I have got one I've only partially unearthed. It was going to be a full site. It was going to be a single volume novel, spanning about a 5-year period. And then I got to the end of the second year, and it was like, Jesus Christ, this thing's like 170,000 words already. So I think this will have to separate into some volumes. And of course, I've shopped it around to a few agents, and a lot of it's not right for the market at the moment, blah, blah. So it's, I put it aside, and I mean, by the time I put it aside, I was obviously sick to the back teeth of all these characters and very much wanted to meet some new ones. And so so at some point I'll hopefully go back to it, but not for the foreseeable future. But as you said, this is one of the reasons I prefer to write, like you, Hailey, I prefer to write standalones, because if you're trying to write a series or you start to write a series and no one's interested in taking it further, then you're left with this kind of unfinished. You're either left with within a kind of unfinished arch, or you have to kind of commit to even more time and energy to finish it on your own dime, rather than actually, writing something that somebody will want to.
Yeah.
I can't do that. And that's probably why I don't sit down to write series, because I can't. Like, it has to I have to finish it. I just have to finish it.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I mean, but on the other hand, when you release it into the world, sometimes you discover that whoever finds it, however, large or small that audience is, the people who find it and the people who connect with it do want more of it. They'll be sending you email and going, what about so and so and so and so? It's like, are you gonna go back to that?
And that's one of those other like, I've had so many people, is there going to be a second Queen of Teeth? And I'm just like, I really don't think so, because especially because, like, okay, that book follows romance rules, even though it's a horror book too. And I would have to focus on a new couple in that world, so it's not going to be what people are really, and with kind of whatever's happening to the original book's couple in the background. And I'm just like, I'd really have to feel motivated to do that, and I'm just not there right now. And I feel like, honestly, what people, when they ask for a sequel, they were like, what happens next with Magenta? And I'm just like, but it wouldn't be about Magenta. So
it would have to be about other stuff.
Right, some other characters.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it's like, I'm like, I don't think that's happening. but it's just one of those things, like, and I'm sure, it's just short stories too. It's like, is there going to be a book of this? And I'm like, well, for those of us who write lots of short stories, we can't really write a book for every short story. Otherwise we wouldn't write the short stories.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, sometimes a short story will plant the seed that grows into something.
Totally. Yeah. And that was even the case with Benny Rose and the Worm and His Kings.
Yeah, you can't rely on it. I mean, I tend to just tell people, don't ask me, I just work here. My job is to show up at the laptop every morning and make a cup of tea and write 1,000 words, and that's my that's my commitment to it, kind of thing. Whatever does the real work is somewhere else.
Again, the cancerous metaphor. It's like, is there more of this? Not yet. Sorry, I'm checking moles, but none of them.
It's still growing.
Not yet.
Have to be.
So, is there anything that we haven't asked so far that you would like us to have asked?
I don't know. I never know what I'm supposed to be asked. So as far as I know, you guys done an amazing job.
Okay, cool. Well, good. Yes, thank you.
Before we go,
this has been a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been really
I think so too.
It's been a lot of fun. So I've got just two things before you go. I mean, something I always love to ask writers: if you could put like one piece of your work, be it a novella, a novel, a short story, into like a time capsule that's in 500 years, even no matter what's happened, if whatever's evolved, in place of humans, maybe can open it and actually read. There'll be like one piece of your work still there, definitely still there in 500 years' time. Which one would you pick?
I mean, and when you phrase it like that, I have a story where someone called Reptile that was in Planet Scum a couple of years ago. That was about a woman who became a human time capsule because her sister trapped her behind this like time door thing, and when she popped out, it had been like 50 years or something, and she essentially made an agreement with the government to keep going into this door and coming out again so that they could kind of preserve history and such. But then she ends up surpassing the lifetime of humans because only like a second would pass for her and years would pass over the other side. So she's like, by the end of the story, there's these people who have evolved from fungi who are like, oh, we have to bring through the special one from the door so she can tell us the stories of the old world and stuff. So I guess when you phrase it that way, I guess it would be that one, because then they'd be like, whoa, what in the meta is this?
How did she know? How did she guess? I love that.
That's great.
Well, one final thing then, because I know the book you've got out right now, No Gods for Drowning. I think this is like probably the biggest thing you've had published.
Yes.
Am I right? Do you want to tell people just a little bit about that so we can spread the word?
Yeah.
Sure. It's a horror noir fantasy, dark fantasy book about this world where humans used to be prey to these kind of like squid mermaid things called glories. And all the humans lived on just this little archipelago, and then these gods came down and saved them. And so we're at 5,000 years later, where the gods have essentially abandoned everyone, and now the glories are trying to eat them again. And this woman, Lilac, has essentially become a serial killer because she's trying to offer people in sacrifice to summon the gods again. And she's being hunted down by detectives. She's trying to keep this secret from her lover Arcadia, and it pretty much takes place in this one city, and it's just a lot of people trying to do what they feel is the right thing, but they all don't agree with each other, so it ends up in blood.
As things do.
Yes.
It's been interesting, the release, because it was pitched as this genre blend of horror, noir, and crime and dark fantasy, and it's been interesting seeing fantasy fans come to it. And some of them being like, "Oh, these are not nice people. These aren't." And it's like, no, they think they're doing the right thing. So they've got that going for them. But there are others who are just like, "This is a bit dark for me." And my hope is that when you blend genres like that, you can bring some people into horror who might not have realized they might like. They might like it this way. They might like some of the bloodshed. They might find themselves wanting to indulge.
Like fairness, really.
And just finding characters who maybe are doing bad things and being like, maybe they feel a little scandalous reading about it, but they find that I want to see what's she going to do next? What's this character going to do next? So it's been fun with that, and I hope that people check it out. And it's unofficially dedicated to everyone who's complained my novellas are too short. So it's the chunker. It's 400 pages. So hopefully everybody is happy with that.
Someone will complain. Why wasn't it why weren't there 800 pages of this?
I haven't seen that yet, and I hope I don't, but that would be funny. I'm just like, I don't know if I could write a book longer than this. I'm not even sure I could write another book that's this long. Each story to me has to be as long as it needs to be. The only reason it's as long as it is because there's so many characters, and it's this, having to develop this world and such, and hopefully it will be less of that to go back to it in the future with short stories and other books.
Yeah. It occurs to me, we keep returning to this idea of self-indulgence, and swimming around in the pool, the dirty pool of horror, of horror and erotica and body horror and power and self-destruction and whatever. It does actually remind me of the way that people used to talk about novels in general back in
That's true.
The Victorian era, which at that point, those types of novels where, things like Lady Audley's Secret, it's like, oh, she's not very nice at all. It's like taking lovers and then, refusing to be blackmailed and throwing people down wells. And that type of literature used to be called sensation literature. Yeah. So perhaps even more than a literature of emotion, horror is a literature of sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I think horror and romance are the two things that are still clinging to that. In that sense, they are. We're not indulgent. We're upholding tradition.
Yeah, exactly. You will get exactly what you want, even if you don't know that you want it. Even if you think you don't want it, and it's okay.
Yeah, and that's the big thing with those genres. It is okay. Yes. None of this is actually happening. It's okay.
Yeah,
but you can take impulses that normally would be completely unacceptable, or you can go further than it would normally be acceptable to go and realize, and you can take things to an extreme that.
Nobody's actually eating a horse. Nobody's actually eating a person. Don't worry about it. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been wonderful. This has been
Brilliant.
really good.
Yeah.
Great way to wake up. That sounds bad. God, Gemma, weren't you awake? Yeah.
This is like early evening here in
Yeah.
here in Britain, just after the first snowfall of the season. So
Oh, wow.
After 3 mugs of tea and half a raspberry Pepsi Max, I'm more or less functional again. Thank God for Pepsi Max. Okay, well,
All right.
it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Hailey.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
No problem. We would have you back in a second.
Absolutely.
Seriously.
If you've got some, if you've got some new, when you've got another new book out, you want to help spread the word.
So in a year, when the next 3 are out.
Yes.
Like it.
Let's do it.
Why not?
Let's indulge ourselves.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
So, a huge thank you to our guest, Hailey Piper, and we will see you in our next podcast. And until then, I have been Simon Bestwick.
I am still Gemma Files, and this, of course, is No Darkness.
No Darkness.
But ours.
With a special guest appearance from Gemma's malfunctioning carbon monoxide detector.
Yes, and I don't know whether you can hear my son blasting "Wake Me Up" before you go in the background.
No.
Okay,
good. It's not last Christmas. If you're going to get wild.
Yeah, seriously.